This week with the coronavirus, we've seen a number of states have started to lift restrictions that were in place to slow the spread of the virus that consequently forced a lot of businesses to close down, which forced people to work at home, put people on furlough, laid off people, had a lot of economic consequences. And now this week we're seeing a number of states either already start to reopen and lift those restrictions. So we're seeing, for example, in Georgia and Texas, in some other states, hair salons are being allowed to reopen, retail stores are allowed to reopen, movie theaters in Texas, for example. And all of those still have restrictions where it's limited capacity or retail stores have to do curbside pickup. But they're starting to lift those restrictions. And then several other states have, if they aren't already reopening, they've rolled out plans to say, here's when we're going to reopen, here's when we're going to start to lift restrictions. And then we still have some stragglers, states that have really had kind of worse infections than others. For example, New York are still kind of waiting to figure out when they're going to be ready to reopen. So we're starting to see that happen with states. And then meanwhile, the White House has really kind of seized on that and has really turned their focus to the economic side of the coronavirus pandemic. So even though we're seeing, hundreds of people a day are still dying, we're still seeing an increase in infections every day. The White House has really kind of shifted its message to talk less about the public health aspect and more about the economic aspect and how they can address that and assist states and urge states to reopen. And that's led to a bit of criticism and a bit of controversy, particularly on Tuesday when we saw Vice President Pence and President Trump say that they are ready to kind of start to wind down the coronavirus task force and potentially move on from that and have it take sort of a different form. And the president has since kind of walked that back and tried to temper it a bit, but he still seems very set on reopening the economy, even though he acknowledges that that's going to lead to an increase in infections and ultimately an increase in deaths from the virus.
I think the debate we're having now about opening back up, I think misses a fundamental issue. You can't open effectively if your customers and consumers aren't ready to go back, right? So you can put out the signs, you can have your staff come back in, you can be ready to serve margaritas, but if the customers are afraid to come in because they're going to catch this infection, you're not in any better situation. In fact, you might be in a worse situation because then you're paying your staff and paying for materials and other things that might go to waste. So I think that's a key element. When I see poll numbers like this about people sort of saying that, oh yeah, we're actually more concerned about opening back up too soon, that says to me that the politics of this isn't helpful either. That you're losing not only Democrats and independents, but even Republicans. The majority of Republicans say that they worry more about opening up too soon than not soon enough. So I think that it's a political loser, and economically it doesn't make sense until people feel comfortable and ready to return. And there's some evidence that in some instances people will go to a park that is relatively populated, but sitting in a movie theater or in a crowded restaurant are very different things when you're sort of, in a confined space with a lot of other people. And I think the American public is just not there in terms of feeling comfortable about, putting themselves in those kind of situations.